Chosen. 1. There is a reason you feel isolated, even when you are surrounded by people, a reason conversations feel shallow, a reason connections dissolve without conflict or explanation, and a reason your presence alone unsettles others even when you remain silent. This is not accidental, and it is not punishment. It is selection. Long before heaven revealed you, darkness noticed you first, because darkness is always alert to light that cannot be controlled. Today, you will finally understand why. Many believe loneliness is a curse, but in the spiritual realm, loneliness is often the first confirmation that you are set apart. You have asked yourself why you feel different, why you never truly fit in, why your soul feels older than your body, and why you perceive patterns others ignore. You tried to blend in, tried to be normal, tried to dim your insight, and tried to silence the inner knowing, but something always pulled you back into solitude. That pull was not weakness, it was protection. Before the world could shape you, God separated you, and when God separates, the enemy observes. The enemy does not study crowds, it studies individuals with potential. That is why your isolation intensified right before breakthroughs, right before clarity, and right before growth. Solitude sharpened you, silence trained your discernment, distance protected your spirit from contamination. Many people were removed from your life not because you were unworthy, but because they could not coexist with your frequency. Some felt exposed around you. Some felt small. Some felt uneasy because your presence mirrored what they were avoiding within themselves. Chosen one, your loneliness was never empty. It was filled with preparation. While others were distracted, you were being refined. While others were entertained, you were being strengthened. While others were seeking approval, you were learning self-trust. This is why your path felt heavy early in life. This is why you matured faster. This is why you see through manipulation. Darkness noticed you because you were never meant to be ordinary. It noticed your resilience, your restraint, and your ability to stand alone without becoming bitter. It noticed that you do not break easily, and that is why opposition increased when you began to awaken. But understand this clearly. What you noticed cannot stop you. The isolation was a corridor, not a destination. It was a sacred pause before alignment. If this resonates, comment "I am chosen," like this video, and subscribe, because this message is not random. It found you on purpose. Now, let's dive deeper. Point 1. The loneliness was initiated before you were conscious of it. Chosen one, your loneliness did not begin in adulthood. It did not begin after betrayal, heartbreak, or disappointment. It began subtly, early, often before you had language to describe it. Even as a child, you felt slightly out of phase with the world around you. You observed more than you spoke. You sensed tension before arguments happened. You felt heaviness in rooms where others felt nothing. This was not sensitivity. It was perception. You were reading invisible patterns, emotional undercurrents, and unspoken truths. While others were busy fitting in, your awareness was quietly expanding. And because of that awareness, full immersion was never permitted. The reason your loneliness began early is because separation must happen before contamination. If your spirit had fully bonded to the world's emotional systems, detaching later would have fractured you. So the separation began quietly, gently, almost invisibly. You were kept on the edge of groups, included but not bonded, present but not absorbed. This is what divine protection looks like in its earliest form. You were allowed proximity without attachment and experience without entanglement. It felt confusing because protection rarely announces itself as comfort. The enemy noticed this early because isolation is a signal. It announces that a soul is being guarded. Darkness does not waste resources monitoring ordinary trajectories. It studies anomalies. You were an anomaly. While others followed predictable emotional scripts, you paused, reflected, and questioned. And while you were trying to understand why you felt different, forces beyond your awareness already knew you could not be shaped easily. That is why loneliness followed you like a shadow, not to harm you, but to prevent premature attachment. Every time you were about to merge too deeply with environments that would have diluted your clarity, distance appeared. Friends drifted, circles closed, doors quietly shut. Not as punishment, but as containment. Your nervous system was being trained to stand alone without collapsing. Your inner world was being fortified before exposure. This is why even now, connection feels selective, rare, and precise. You are not meant to dissolve into crowds or identities that require self-erasure. Your path requires internal sovereignty. Loneliness became your early teacher because silence sharpens discernment. Solitude strengthens intuition. Stillness builds endurance. What once felt like absence was actually alignment in disguise. You were never abandoned. You were preserved. And the same force that kept you separate as a child is still active now, ensuring that when you finally connect, it will not be by accident, impulse, or fear, but by recognition, resonance, and purpose. Point 2. Why attachment was removed instead of healed. Chosen. 1. Many people pray for healing when God is actually performing removal, and this distinction is critical to understand because healing restores what already exists, but removal prepares you for what has not yet been revealed. You wondered why relationships did not improve even when you tried harder, communicated better, prayed deeper, or sacrificed more of yourself. You questioned your worth, your effort, and your patience. But the reason nothing shifted is because some connections are not broken because of conflict, betrayal, or misunderstanding. They are broken because of calling. They cannot follow you into the next phase without distorting it. Healing would have allowed you to stay longer than you should, and staying longer would have delayed your awareness, your authority, and your clarity. So instead of repairing the bond, God quietly weakened your emotional investment. This is how divine separation works. It does not always arrive through chaos. Sometimes it arrives through silence. You woke up one day and realized you no longer felt the same pull. Conversations that once energized you felt empty. Familiar laughter felt distant. Shared memories lost their emotional weight. This was not coldness, and it was not cruelty. This was detachment, and detachment is a form of mercy. The enemy exploits attachment because attachment creates leverage. The more emotionally bonded you are, the easier you are to manipulate, distract, guilt, and drain. Emotional dependency makes even strong souls negotiable. So God reduced your dependency on others before the enemy could use it against you. This is why your loneliness often came after a strange numbness. Not depression, not despair, but a quiet pulling back, a gentle disengagement, an inner loosening. You were being unhooked from emotional agreements that no longer served your assignment. You were being released from roles you outgrew but stayed loyal to out of habit. While it felt like loss, it was actually protection. God didn't take people away to punish you. He took influence away to preserve you. What you lost was not love, but access. What faded was not connection, but control. And what emerged was not emptiness, but space. Space for discernment. Space for strength. Space for alignment. This season is not about being alone forever. It is about becoming unattachable to what cannot go with you, so when the right connections arrive, they meet you whole, clear, and unburdened. Point 3. The enemy's interest was never about your weakness. Chosen one, it is important to correct a misunderstanding that has quietly shaped how you interpret your past. The opposition did not focus on you because you were weak, broken, or uncertain. It focused on you because there was a resilience in you that had not yet fully revealed itself, even to you. You were observed carefully. Pain was applied deliberately, not to destroy you, but to see what would surface under pressure. And what surfaced confused the enemy. Pain did not turn you cruel. Silence did not make you desperate. Confusion did not erase your sense of right and wrong. You questioned reality, but you did not abandon yourself. You bent, but you did not break. That alone placed you in a rare category. Most people fracture internally when isolation lingers too long. They numb themselves, harden their hearts, or chase validation to escape discomfort. You did something different. You adapted inwardly. You developed an internal dialogue instead of external dependency. You learned how to regulate your emotions without an audience. You became observant rather than reactive, thoughtful rather than impulsive. These are not traits of mere survival. These are traits of leadership, discernment, and quiet authority. The enemy attempted to exhaust you emotionally, hoping that prolonged pressure would make you seek approval, comfort, or identity from unsafe places. It expected you to trade your values for relief. But instead, you learned how to exist without applause. You learned how to stand without witnesses. And that is when the threat level increased. A person who does not require validation cannot be easily manipulated. A person who does not rush toward approval cannot be redirected from their path. That is why resistance followed you even when you were doing nothing wrong. That is why misunderstandings surrounded you without explanation. You were not being punished. You were being assessed for dependency. Each moment you chose integrity over comfort, patience over impulse, and self-respect over escape. The opposition lost leverage. What you endured was not random suffering. It was a refining pressure, revealing what could not be corrupted. You were being shaped into someone who could carry clarity without ego, strength without cruelty, and solitude without bitterness. And now, looking back, you can see it clearly. You were never targeted because you were fragile. You were targeted because you were unbendable in the ways that mattered most. Point 4. Silence was not absence. It was conditioning. Chosen one. The quiet seasons were not empty seasons. They were conditioning periods designed with precision and intention, moments where nothing seemed to be happening on the surface. Yet everything essential was being formed beneath it. Because while others were learning how to perform for approval, you were learning how to perceive truth without applause. While others were learning how to speak louder to be noticed, you were learning when silence carries more authority than noise, when stillness communicates strength, and when restraint protects power. And this is not accidental. This is training, because any calling that requires influence must first be immune to distraction, immune to validation addiction, immune to the emotional noise that weakens judgment. And this is why you were placed in environments where you had to rely on internal guidance without external reinforcement, where intuition became sharper because reassurance was absent, where discernment matured because comfort was removed, because the enemy uses noise to distort clarity, to rush decisions, to provoke reactions, to keep people impulsive and predictable. But God uses silence to sharpen awareness, to deepen perception, to slow you down enough to hear what others miss. And that is why your mind matured faster than your social life, why you saw patterns others overlooked, why you felt out of place in shallow conversations, why depth came to you before recognition. Because silence does not entertain the ego, it refines the spirit. And through that refinement, you learned patience, not passive patience, but disciplined patience, the kind that teaches you how to wait without weakening, how to observe without reacting, how to endure without becoming bitter. And patience teaches restraint. Restraint teaches control. And control is the foundation of real authority, because authority does not need to announce itself. It does not argue. It does not chase validation. It does not panic when ignored. It moves calmly and decisively. And that is why you often felt invisible while you were becoming formidable, because visibility is not power. Readiness is. And the enemy prefers impulsive power because impulsive power burns fast and collapses under pressure. But God builds quiet power, power that is stable, power that is self-governed, power that can be trusted with responsibility, and every moment you felt overlooked, isolated, or delayed was not punishment, it was preparation, a strengthening of internal structure, a fortifying of character, a calibration of perception, so that when influence eventually arrives, it does not corrupt you. When authority is given, it does not intoxicate you. And when responsibility increases, you do not collapse under its weight, because you were trained in the unseen before being revealed in the visible. You were grounded before being elevated, and you were taught to command respect naturally. Not through force, not through performance, but through presence, because the kind of influence you are being prepared for does not seek attention. It commands it effortlessly, and when the season shifts and the quiet lifts, you will realize that nothing was wasted, nothing was delayed, and nothing was taken from you. You were simply becoming someone who could carry weight without making noise. Point 5. Why misunderstanding followed you everywhere. Chosen. 1. Misunderstanding is not a flaw in your path. It is a consequence of clarity existing inside a confused environment. From early on, you noticed that people rarely saw you as you truly were. You were misread, mislabeled, and projected onto without invitation. Assumptions were made about your motives, your intentions, and your heart. Accusations arrived for plans you never designed, and thoughts you never entertained. This was not coincidence, and it was never random. When people cannot read you, they do not sit with the uncertainty. They fill the gap with their own fears, wounds, and unresolved shadows. Your calm became a mirror they could not tolerate. Your self-containment unsettled those who depended on emotional chaos to feel important, alive, or superior. You did not need to say much for this reaction to occur. Your presence alone disrupted unstable systems. This is why misunderstanding followed you like a shadow. The enemy understands this psychological law very well. Misunderstanding is one of the oldest tools used to isolate the chosen socially. If you are misunderstood long enough, the hope is that you'll begin to doubt yourself, over-explain your truth, and exhaust your spirit trying to be seen. Over-explanation is not communication. It is submission to distortion. And this is where the training began without you realizing it. You learned restraint while others demanded reaction. You learned stillness while others thrived on noise. Notice what happened when you stopped defending yourself. The narratives about you did not stabilize. They multiplied, contradicted each other, and collapsed under their own weight. That is because truth does not require maintenance. Lies do. Truth stands on its own frequency. Lies need repetition, allies, and emotional fuel to survive. Every time you refuse to engage, The distortion starved. Silence did not make you weak. Silence revealed who was depending on your reaction to validate their false story. This is why you gradually learned not to defend yourself. Defense feeds distortion. Defense signals that the lie deserves a response. Silence, on the other hand, communicates something far more powerful: irrelevance. You were being trained to move without permission from public opinion, to act without needing consensus, to exist without explanation. Long before you named it, you were mastering emotional sovereignty, and the enemy noticed too late. They realized that you were no longer governable by opinion, gossip, or social pressure. You were no longer pulled by misunderstanding because you understood something deeper. Being misunderstood does not mean you are unclear. It often means you are operating at a level others have not reached. And clarity in a confused world will always look threatening. This is not a season of correction for you. It is confirmation. You are not here to be easily understood. You are here to be aligned. Point 6. The protection phase delays recognition on purpose. Chosen 1. Public recognition too early would have altered you in ways that could not be reversed. It would have trained your nervous system to look outward for confirmation instead of inward for truth. It would have tied your sense of worth to reactions, numbers, applause, and opinions that shift with the wind. That kind of exposure does not strengthen identity. It dilutes it. It creates dependency on approval and anxiety around withdrawal. That is why your growth was hidden. That is why your refinement happened away from the crowd. You were being shaped in a place where no one could interfere with the calibration of your inner compass. Your breakthroughs had to be internal before they could ever be external, because external success without internal stability produces collapse, not elevation. You were learning how to remain grounded when nothing was affirming you, how to stay consistent when no one was watching, and how to self-regulate when praise was absent and criticism was irrelevant. Stability before exposure is rare, because most people are introduced to attention before they're introduced to self-knowledge. When visibility arrives too early, it magnifies unresolved fractures. That is why many collapse under pressure, sabotage themselves, or lose clarity once they are seen. They were never taught to stand alone. You were. You learned how to sit with silence, how to endure seasons where effort produced no recognition, and how to build discipline without reward. In those moments, the enemy attempted to tempt you with shortcuts: attention without alignment, belonging without integrity, and validation without substance. You were offered paths that looked beneficial on the surface, but required subtle compromise underneath. And yet something in you always refused to settle. Even when the opportunity seemed right, even when others told you to take it, even when logic said it would help, you felt the misalignment. That discernment was not accidental. It was sharpened in isolation, forged through repeated moments of choosing long-term coherence over short-term relief. You learned to trust that quiet resistance inside you, the one that does not shout but does not bend. That is why now, as recognition approaches, it will not intoxicate you. It will not destabilize you or redefine you. You will not chase it, cling to it, or fear losing it, because you already know who you are without witnesses. You have lived in the absence of applause and discovered that your identity remained intact. You have walked through invisibility and did not disappear. Recognition, when it comes, will simply reveal what was already solid. It will not create you, it will confirm you. And because your foundation was built privately, visibility will not make you perform. It will allow you to remain yourself under light. That is the difference. That is why you were delayed. That is why you were protected. That is why when others rise and fracture, you rise and remain whole. Point 7. The shift feels subtle because you are ready. Chosen one. The end of the protection phase does not arrive loudly. It arrives as calm certainty. You notice you're no longer chasing understanding. You stop trying to explain yourself. You feel less urgency to prove anything. This is not apathy. This is grounding. When readiness arrives, chaos leaves. The enemy retreats quietly when access is lost, and access is lost when awareness stabilizes. You are not entering a season of noise. You are entering a season of alignment. People will sense you before they understand you. Opportunities will appear without force. You will move with precision rather than urgency. This is what all the loneliness was building toward. You were not isolated to be alone forever. You were isolated so that when connection returns, it will be clean, intentional, and aligned. The devil did not choose you because he owned you. He observed you because he could not control you. And now the phase he feared most has begun. Clarity without fear, strength without arrogance, and presence without attachment. Remain steady. Remain grounded. The protection has done its work.